of their top and true cause. Ladies and gentlemen, the third issue I would like to speak about, the repercussions of this event. What's been happening on the battlefield, I believe you are all closely following. No doubt it was a brave, heroic, creative, perfect, massive operation, commended at all fronts and at all levels. What are the repercussions of this glorious operation? It caused a seismic shake, an earthquake in terms of security, military, politics, diplomatic, even psychological. It has very profound strategic, existential repercussions that will continue to have bearing on the presence of this Zionist entity and its future. No matter what the enemy's government has done over the past days, and no matter what they will do over the coming days, cannot change the impacts and repercussions of Al-Aqsa Typhoon strategically and historically on this Zionist entity and the future of the conflict in this region. This operation has lifted the lid and uncovered many facts. However, speaking of the repercussions, the glorious repercussions and effects of this glorious operation requires hours, if not days. However, what's more important, it has exposed the frailty, weakness, and total fragility of Israel, more frail than a spider's web. I have read some reports on the Israeli media that the Israelis themselves have come now to believe, more than someone, meaning myself. The Israelis have come to believe that Israel is more frail than a spider's web. This fact was established and cemented by Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation. The United States administration, represented in their president, ministers, state secretaries, and even top brass, to support this shaking entity in order to get some breathe, get back on its feet again, and to restore some action and to take the initiative, which he has until now. And they had it to provide all forms of protection and support. The swift response by the United States to support and back Israel has proven how failing Israel is. From the very first days of Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation against a totally besieged Gaza Strip, the Israeli government was in a dire need for the U.S. fleets to navigate to the Mediterranean for military and psychological support. Where is your fleet? Where is your warplanes? Where is the invincible army of Israel, the mightiest in the region? Where is all that? The United States hurriedly dispatched warplane carriers and other pieces of their naval fleet. The U.S. top brass generals military experts running to the area to open the strategic weapon depots for the Israelis. From the very first days, Israel demanded new weapons, new missiles from the United States. From the very first day, Israel demanded $10 billion. Is it a strong state? Is it an invincible army, as claimed? A state that required that amount of US and Western support? Heads of state, heads of governments, defense ministers, top brass generals, flocking from all over the world to provide moral support. This is what Al-Aqsa Typhoon has caused to this frail entity. These are some of the profound impacts of Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation. All these must be evaluated and analyzed in detail, which we don't have time to. Yet, we must understand that all the sacrifices offered in Gaza, West Bank, and at all fronts are really worthy. All these sacrifices, all these achievements, outcomes, and repercussions deserve all these sacrifices simply for the reason that it paved a way for a new slate in our conflict with the Israeli enemy. It paved the way for many countries and nations within the region. There was and there is no other option. The other option is silence, waiting for more oppression, more siege, more death, more killing. This was the other option. That's why we can say that the decision was wise, brave, prudent, and worthy of all these sacrifices. The next point, how was the enemy's response to Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation? From the very first hours, it was clear that the enemy was lost, stray. You know, it's a Sabbath day, and this was a perfect timing by the commander of Al-Qassam. It seems that they have had a long night, drunkards, not only in Gaza envelope, but also Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. It took them hours to come out. They came out in historical state, angry, in an insane fashion. That's why when they had it to recapture the settlement within Gaza envelope, they perpetrated massacres against the Israeli settlers, not Hamas. Now we start to hear and read reports and investigations providing evidence that it was the Israelis who perpetrated the killing among the Israeli settlers. And in the near future, when the dust settles, the whole world would come to know that all those killed within Gaza envelope were killed by the Israeli army itself, who was acting insanely. In the wake of this big seismic event, it seems that the successive government of Israel do not learn the lesson. Unlike we always hear that Israel is learning the lesson, here they are. They never learn from past lessons or experiences, especially their experiment or experience with their wars against resistance factions in Lebanon and Palestine. What is taking place today took place in the past with some differences. In July 2006, in the successive wars with Gaza, at a different scale and different levels. Among the gravest mistakes committed by the enemy in the past, and it is taking place now, is setting high goals that they cannot achieve. Setting high goals they cannot reach. They set as top goal to annihilate Hamas, the whole of Hamas. Then, speaking of toppling the government of Hamas, then eliminating the leaders of Hamas, then the military wing of Hamas. Now they are claiming to have as a top goal to annihilate Hamas. And when they started to wake up, they now speak about another goal, to bring home the captives. Those who have had a long experience with different resistance factions in Palestine and Lebanon throughout history, have you seen at any point of time the Israelis capable of releasing their captives without negotiations? Never. What happened in Lebanon 2006? They declared as the goal is to annihilate, to wipe out HEZBOLLAH. They were backed by the United States and the whole West, including Arab states. Their goal at that time was to wipe out HEZBOLLAH from Lebanon and to bring home the 2 Israeli captives. The war extended for 33 days. Neither HEZBOLLAH was wiped out, nor their 2 captives released without negotiations. The same thing is taking place today in Gaza, yet with a difference, and the difference is the massive pogrom, the massive amount of destructions and killing. In July war, 1,150 houses leveled, thousands of fallen martyrs. Yet, the resistance fighters at all fronts, backed by the Lebanese people, stood their ground. The enemy, step by step, gave up on his goals. What's taking place in Gaza Strip today proves the stupidity and impotency of the Israelis. They are wreaking killing among civilian Palestinians in Gaza. Most of those killed are women and children. The majority of the victims are civilians. Churches, mosques, school buildings, even hospitals are not spared. Everything is legitimized. Entire neighborhoods are wiped out. School buildings, places of worship, and the whole world is standing by watching. Does this require an invincible army? For a whole month, the Israelis failed to produce a single military achievement. And when they started the ground operation, the same scenario of July war in Lebanon, the random shelling, displacement of citizens, and the killing and the falling of thousands of martyrs could not bring the resistance to their knees. Then, at that time, the Israelis started their ground operation, and to them, our fighters stood up to them, and the whole battle was followed by the whole world. The same thing is repeated in Gaza. The Israelis are trying to launch a ground operation in order to sell to the whole world that they are launching a large-scale ground operation. Even the limited moves taken by them were met by the bravery of the Palestinian resistance. We have all watched this resistance fighter approaching and placing the explosive on the top of the tank. How do you think the Israeli troops will be able to fight amongst those brave fighters? Nothing but confusion, fear, and frailty. What the Israelis are good at over the past 75 years is nothing but perpetrating pogroms, massacres, with the aim of exercising pressure on the leaders of the resistance to wave the white flag. And I believe the scenes we have been witnessing every day, every hour, every minute, women, men, children, crawling from underneath the rubble, crying out and saying, "We are holding our ground. We are standing tall. The end of this battle will be nothing but your defeat. By killing innocent civilians, you will not achieve anything." All what's taken place in Gaza Strip, seen by the whole world, reveals and proves once again the brutal, barbaric nature of the Zionist regime of Israel, the usurping, occupying force that was planted in our region in Palestine on the grounds of the ill-fated Balfour Declaration, to feed on wars in the region, targeting Palestine and the Palestinian people, followed by the Egyptians, Lebanese, and all the peoples of the region. After all these long years, as they tried to convince the whole world that this entity is a state of rule of law, humanity, democracy, this is all proven false. We have witnessed victims, men and women, innocent civilians, the children of Gaza have unmasked the truth of this barbaric regime, backed by the Western media, who are trying to convince our peoples to remain silent or even normalize with the Zionist entity. This also reveals the direct responsibility and liability of the United States. Also, the U.S. hypocrisy. From day one, Biden claims to have spoken to the Israelis about humanitarian issues, civilians, all false claims. For a month, Gaza and the Gazans have been reeling under the brunt of barbaric, ferocious, brutal, ruthless, merciless aerial bombardments. They falsely claimed that Hamas beheaded babies, and they failed to produce a single piece of evidence. Yet, they remain silent against the images of thousands of babies and children torn apart in Gaza as a result of the Israeli missiles. Now all exposed, the whole West claiming and preaching about democracy, humanity, rule of law. It's nothing but hypocrisy. It is a lynch law. We are living in a jungle. We all must establish this fact. The United States is totally responsible for the war raging in Gaza against unarmed, defenseless people. It is the United States that vetoes condemnation of Israel in the Security Council. It's the United States that stands on the way of a ceasefire in Gaza. It is the United States proving once again, as described by Khomeini, it is the greatest Satan, the great devil. From Hiroshima to Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, the United States must be held liable and then penalized for all what it has been perpetrating against our people and the peoples of the region. And there comes the decision by the Islamic resistance movement in Iraq to launch offenses against the American bases in Iraq and Syria, considering that the United States is controlling the war in Gaza, and it is the United States that must pay the price for the crimes perpetrated by the Israelis in Gaza and by the Americans in Iraq and elsewhere. It is a wise decision by the resistance fighters in Iraq, prudent, blissful, and wise decision. Yesterday also we heard about new measures against the occupied Palestinian territories, and this will be revealed on the coming days and hours. And here we salute all those noble men, noble fighters who are lending a helping hand to their fellow resistance fighters.